What's up, everybody? Tonight we got Creole, we got Catfish Junkie, and it's me and John, like always. Tonight, Creole gonna be talking about the Ancient Mariner 7000
Yep.
and what he thinks about it. So, hey, Miss
I've
Jody,
had
Mike
I've had
Sanderson.
mine for I bought one, used it for a while. Now I have the others. So in fact, this one that I'm holding here, I've had it for a while now. I haven't caught nothing big on it yet, but I've casted it. I've had a couple of fish on it, so I can kind of give a few first impressions. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, what is it that what do you like about the 7000 the most?
The first thing I noticed about it, the first time I ever held one in my hands, is I was surprised at the weight of it. And to me, a little weight is good because a little weight means good materials, thick metals. It's something that's going to hold up. Durability is absolutely my number one thing with everything I own. I don't care what it is because I beat my gear and I beat my boat, I beat my truck to death using it. I got to have something that holds up. And that's the first thing I noticed. Holding that reel, it's a little heavier than what it looks like it would be. And you start handling all the levers, throwing things, adjusting things. Everything has a weight and a solidness to it that I really like to see in a reel versus some of these other reels, maybe with the composite frames and composite levers and stuff on them. They just don't have that same, good solid feel to them, like this one did.
Absolutely, absolutely. What I like about it is I'm using it on the coast. I do use it off the boat too. I like the amount of line that it holds. I've got over 300 yards on there of 80-pound braid. So, we kayak out from the beach. We got to have at least 200 yards out there and about 100 yards to find a fish. So,
Right.
that's one thing I like about it. Very solid, like you said. I mean, just holding it in your hand and reeling it a few times. We're like a kid in the candy store when it comes to reels. We're going to check out everything about it.
Yeah.
Good evening, Antoine.
Yeah,
Uh, I
exactly.
I know what I've done with it. I've hung it up on purpose, drug the back of that pontoon around against the current quite a few times. And I haven't had any problems yet.
Yeah. The best I did with it so far was over there by you, John. We all got together. I caught a 33-pound blue on it, and it did real good. I mean, he took drag. I had to, I adjusted a little bit during the fight and all that stuff, and it reacted, pretty much like the 6,000. I have a whole bunch of 6,000s, but my first 7,000, I'm really gonna put it to the test. Probably late March, early April on the coast. We're really gonna see what this reel
Yep.
can do. I mean, it's different over there on the coast. I mean, them fish are just, especially you hook into some big alligator gar or something like that. It's really gonna put your equipment to the test.
All right. He has to come say hi. What can I say?
That's-
That's just normal
I got
thing.
I got dogs scratching at the door right now.
Mhm. I know when I first heard of the Ancient Mariner 7000, it's been quite a while now. I've always been curious about them, and I would ask other people like, "Hey, how big is the reel? How big is this thing?" And the response I would always get was, "Oh, it's a massive reel. That thing is huge. It's too big." That's what I kept hearing from other people, but never having seen one for myself. Well, when I finally bit the bullet and bought me one, well, actually, let me back up a little bit. One of the times I met John to get tackle from him, he had one in his hands. He's like, "Here, I know you always wanted to see one. Here it is." So, and seeing it for the first time, I realized for me, it's not too big of a reel. It's a big reel, but it's not too big of a reel. So, for comparison, everybody knows what this is right here. Everybody's seen them. Most people have owned them at one time or another. This is a Pin Squall 20 level wine reel. I mean, this is a very common size out there. A lot of people know what this is. But I was surprised to learn that the reels, if you look, they are almost the exact same width. If anything, the Ancient Mariner, which I have in this hand, is just a hair narrower in overall body width, right? But what surprised me the most is holding them this way. The Ancient Mariner is slightly bigger than the Squall, but it's not double the diameter like what some people were trying to tell me before I ever saw for myself.
What up, Ron?
So it's a little bigger around than a Pin Squall, which of course makes it hold more line. I don't have an estimate on how much, let's say, standard 40-pound mono this thing holds. It's got to be close to, I'm going to say, somewhere between 250 and 300 yards. That's my estimate of what this reel will hold. I can tell you for a fact, if you buy some of Freddie's 40-pound mono, that's half the diameter, it takes 525 yards of it. I can tell you that for a fact. I reeled that thing forever trying to put line on this thing. It is great. But, you know, like they were saying, a couple of things of me holding it for the first time that right off the bat is it's got the same big engagement lever like all the other reels do. You know, big, I'm backwards here. Big lever on this side. But you'll notice when you click the reel, it has a nice long throw to it. It's solid. A thing that I noticed, and I'm going to try to put it up to my mic where y'all can hear. You have to reel it in to engage the reel. You cannot manually throw that lever like on the pin reels. But I want y'all to listen closely whenever I reel it in. Do you hear that first click? And then you reel it a little more, then there's the big second click. It almost has like a dual stage engagement to the reeling action, almost like the hammer on a revolver. And from what Spyron, the owner, explained to me about that is designed on purpose as a dual stage engagement, just in case the handle does rotate just a little bit when you're casting. That dual stage engagement will keep it from kicking the reel halfway in a cast. And I can tell y'all already, every time I threw this thing, I tried my best to put the lever in a position to try to make it engage during a cast. I couldn't do it. I could not make the reel engage halfway during a cast, no matter how hard I tried.
Yeah, so I like that about the 7,000 too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of experience I had with even with some of these smaller reels on the cheaper side. You chunk them and that thing will engage just from the motion of you casting it, and then your weight and your bait and everything's flying off, and you.
Right. Well, and the reason for that is right here.
That counterbalance.
See that huge counterweight on this handle? That is exactly why that handle won't fly around when you're casting the reel. And that's also the same reason that I can sit here and hold this reel with 2 fingers and reel it, and it's not trying to flop around in my fingers.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. If you do the same thing, I'm going to try to hold it the best I can, but you try to do the same thing with this Pin Squall. See how he wants to shake in my hand?
Because it don't got the counterbalance.
You don't have the counterbalance, so the reel, especially a wide reel like this, it wants to wobble like this.
Yeah.
Whenever you try to reel the thing. It's little, some of these things may not bother people either way, but when you've thrown enough of these big reels, little things like that start standing out to you, and it's just to bring them to light. That may be the difference in someone purchasing the Ancient Mariner or going with something else. That could be the difference that decides it for you.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Just their product in general. I have 3 years experience with them reels, and I couldn't be happy. And now majority of that came with the 6,000. But now that I do have a 7,000, the fish I hooked on it and how how it reacted and all that stuff has been, I have nothing but positive things to say, just as I do for the 6,000. So
Yeah.
Right. And as far as the drag on these things, they have a ton of drag power. Okay, they have a absolute ton of drag power, probably a lot more than any cat fisherman really ever needs. And because of the design of the drag, it doesn't take much of a touch on the star drag to tighten that drag up. That's something that some people kind of have to get used to versus, let's say, a carbon fiber drag system. Is a carbon fiber drag system, you turn it half a turn, you might be adding 2 pounds of drag to this thing. Yeah. This thing, if you can turn it a full half a turn, you could be adding probably 20 pounds of pressure to that drag. Like right now, I've got it probably set to, I don't know, maybe 5 pounds of pull. Not much drag at all. I can easily just pull it nice and smooth. And I'm going to turn it that much right there. I moved it, what, a 1/4 inch, maybe? And now
you got problems.
I probably added about 2 pounds to it right there. And I can turn it that much more, like 1/8 of a turn, and it tightened up again. See, those small adjustments on this reel, I'm starting to find out.
Yeah,
it makes a big difference. See there, I tightened up the drag quite a bit just with that little, but that's something to keep in mind. And I know there has been some issues in the past with people saying there's a problem with the drag system locking up, not realizing that they turned the star drag. It's not that it's locked up, but you've given it probably all 35 pounds of drag force that this thing is capable of. All of a sudden, you've given it everything you've got. It feels like it's locked up because there's so much power in that drag now, and it'll snap your line before ever trying to engage all that drag. Me personally, I like a reel with a lot of drag power. Not that I need it. I don't want all that drag, but I'd rather a reel with 30 pounds of drag, but use it at 50% to where it's nice and smooth, than a reel that's all it's capable of is 15, 18 pounds of drag and have to run it really, really tight. Then you don't get your smoothness out of it. That's when you start getting a jerky drag. You're at the end of that reel's rope, let's say, as far as drag power, you won't get the smoothness out of
it. Yeah, that's true. 100% true.
But you have to understand the animal you're dealing with here. These are composite textured drag washers. They require a little different treatment than everything else everybody's used to. You know, nothing wrong with that. It's just a different animal to deal with. That's all. And if you understand that, you know what you're dealing with, you'll have a better experience with it.
Well, I've seen people go from iPhones to Samsung phones and now have an issue. So I don't think this would be an unusual issue.
That's a very good way of putting it. Is nothing wrong with either one, but when you're so used to a certain thing, then you change to something else. That's when you're gonna, and you may not like it. You may not like the way the drag behaves because of that, but it's not the reel's fault. It's performing exactly the way it was designed. Maybe you just don't care for that. Big difference.
My experience is similar to what you were talking about. Not knowing about the drag system. And when I switched, this is 3 years ago, to the 6,000, I tightened that drag when I was fighting a fish, and he sunk my braid into the braid, the spool, and I almost lost that fish. Almost lost that fish. He would end up not being that big. He was 36 pounds, but he sunk that braid in there to where he pulled a little bit, and I was worried. I saw this thing ain't spinning. This fish is pulling. Kind of gotta be worried a little bit when that happens. But that was just from not getting the feel of the drag system. But I like the shorter terms to put the drag on it. And like you said, running it a little bit less and getting that smoothness is fighting a fish like that is what you want. So
yeah, absolutely. And everybody has a preference on that. I know some people who love to run the drags on the average reel, I'll say, love to run the drags almost wide open tight. They really want that rod to just hammer down and Some people prefer to do it that way. I'm the type to where I think I run my drags maybe a little looser than most, because what I do, it'll still pull my rods down. Don't get me wrong, but I rather have that little bit of slack just in case he makes a hard run right off the bat. Some of these river fish tend to do that. When I pick up that rod, sometimes what I'll do, I'll take my thumb and I'll kind of put it on the line and I'll pull back on and raise that rod up. That makes sure that without compromising my drag, I'm giving my hook one more chance to really get a good set without having to adjust my drag. It's just a little trick that I've done over the years that kind of helps me, especially when I think it's a big fish. I'm going to just thumb that line and just, not set the hook. I'm just going to pull on it, put some good pressure on him, let that hook get in that big mouth good.
Yeah. What I like about it, though, is it really does, believe it or not, as big as it is and as much line as you can put on the spool, that thing will still cast really good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The first time we ever brought it on the water, I handed my son the 7,000, and I had it on at the time, I had it on a B&M Elite heavy action rod. Love that rod. And I just gave it to him. I said, here, cast it. I said, I want this to be my long rod, which means the one I want the furthest out the back of the boat. I said, this is the long rod. I said, send it. Didn't tell him a thing. Well, he gave it about the same effort that he would one of my Penn squalls, because that's what we're used to throwing. And he probably sailed it a good 75 feet further than what I wanted him to throw it, because he wasn't aware of how smooth and how good the reel casted. He sailed that sucker to the other side of the current seam. I said, whoa, okay. I said, okay, bring it back a little bit, too far. He looked at me, he said, man, this thing casts good. I said, that's why I didn't tell you. I wanted you to use the same effort that you always use and see how the reel reacts. And that's exactly what it did.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I haven't used the 7,000 myself, and I haven't held one. But I got the 6,000s, and the drag system on them too. I like them. They're real good. And that jigger reel, the drag on that, and the gear ratio on that thing, that 6.3 gear ratio, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I thought that might have been my only issue with the 7,000 is that low gear ratio. He advertised it at 3.7 to 1. I'm like John, it's closer to 4 to 1, especially when it's full of line. I thought I would have an issue with that. I really did. That it was too many cranks, let's say, to reel in the baits back to the boat. But what I found was the lower gear ratio, especially in the strong current, makes it easier to bring the lines in. So even though it's more cranks, my arm ain't tired by the time I get 200 feet of line back to my boat. So lo and behold, I actually like the lower gear ratio where I thought I wasn't going to like it. So that's a bonus for me.
Yeah, as far as the gear ratio goes, I found my magic number to be the 5.3. I really enjoy that. It's not much that you're gaining per crank. I mean, I know people are infatuated with these numbers, but I actually did measurements on them, and I'm like, dude, I'm only gaining 4 inches with the 5.3, even though it just feels it feels like a different, there's a different feel when you reel it in. I guess I don't know if the 4 inches for catfish matters, but for the versatile reel and all that stuff, like I said, when I put the 7,000 on the coast, these fish that dart left and right, in and out, and do that the whole fight. That's the way they fight. Basically with catfishing, you might get 4 runs tops out of a young fish with a lot of energy. So we'll see what it does with out there on the coast, and but I'm really happy with the 7,000, the feel, the drag, and all that. I got comfortable with it a long time ago, so there's no big switches on it.
As far as catfishing goes, even with the lower gear ratio, I don't foresee, because every now and then, you know how it is, you'll have a fish, he'll bite, and he'll start coming to the boat, and you got to try to catch up with him. Catfish don't run upriver that fast. I don't foresee having to have a 6'3", 6'7", anything like that gear ratio
Yeah.
to try to catch up to a fish, because it's the catfish just don't run towards you that fast. You're going to catch up to it fine with any gear ratio. I don't think that's going to be that much of an issue there. I thought it was. I thought it was going to be an issue, but after using this reel with a low gear ratio, apparently I'm a fan of a low gear ratio. I just didn't know it.
What's up, Fern? I see Fern come in. We got Marcus Land. He's in on Facebook side. Antoine Head. And I think Spyron's in there also.
Yeah,
what's going on, brother?
But but definitely Richard was talking Fishing and Freedom. He said Spyron told him on the 7,000 it's, I think he said 40 pounds of max drag.
I believe it. I believe it, because when you lock that thing down, I can't pull a line out of it with my bare hand.
Yeah. I was having that issue. I was having that issue when I bought my first one, and I actually called John. Remember I called you and I said, "Hey, listen, I can't get this thing to turn."
You'd be surprised how far you have to back off of it to start feeling like the normal drag, like we like. It was something's wrong for a second. Like, okay, there ain't no way. No, it's just it's got that much power. You have to back off of it enough to start, and once you get in that range that you like, there's plenty of adjustment. There's plenty of room. It's all there. You just have to kind of get, like I said, you're dealing with a different animal. You have to understand what you're dealing with and why. Once you get used to that fact, you're good to go.
Yeah. See, that's what I like to do. I like to throw the poles out there, and I got a feel to it. I grab my line, and when I pull it, there's a certain feel. Most of my reels are already set, but like I said, I just purchased the 7,000. I put the line on it actually in John's kitchen before we went out fishing that morning, and just grabbing it. I was pulling on it. I said, wait a minute, I don't like, this is way too tight. And I tried to adjust it just a little bit, and it still wouldn't pull. And then before you knew it, I was on the phone with John saying, "Hey man, I think there's something wrong with this drag." It was me. It was the user.
You weren't backing off of it enough.
Yeah, not used to that much power of drag.
Yeah, exactly. Having to have that much. Now, for whatever reason, if you need the power, it's there.
It's there.
That's what I keep going back to that. Will I ever need that much drag? Probably not. I hope not, because I'm in trouble if I need that much drag. But it's there if I need it, and to me it makes such a smooth drag when you run it at 50% or less power. It's just silky smooth. I personally don't like a reel that you have to run 80% or more of its drag potential to get what you want. You're not going to get a smooth drag out of it. You're just not.
You sound like me talking about my boat motor. I won't run over 4,000 RPMs.
Yeah, exactly. But it's there if you need it, right?
Yeah, and actually, I do use it. I do max it out. If I feel the fish, then he feels like a 4-pounder. I mean, he's coming to the boat like a jet ski.
You're just going to haul him in. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But that's the thing. A lot of people don't understand drag in general, because, I mean, they watch these videos, these cool clips and all that stuff of, bending that rod, pulling as hard as you can, it looks cool in a clip, but that's not really how you fight a fish.
Right.
A fight is what it is. A fight is a process. It's not something that you're not fighting a fish if you're yanking on them and pulling them in as hard as you can, because these fish that we're catching, especially in the river, you got the current. You got to kind of figure out what you got on the other end of that line, because a lot of times you won't know until that third run out that he does, and you say, "Oh, okay, this is a good fish." Mm-hmm. So fight the fish.
And something else a lot of people don't really think about is let's just I'm running 40-pound line, and let's just say I'm running the max drag I possibly can before the line breaks. Okay, and I mean you can play Freebird on the line if you wanted to. It's just tight. But what happens if while you're fighting that fish, a piece of debris comes by and hits that line? When it's that tight, what's going to happen? It's going to pop the line.
You got no,
You have no give, no nothing at that point. it's gone. So I get the guys
Yeah.
wanting to run it tight for those nice takedowns and everything, but man, there's too much that can go wrong during a fish fight. A good, skilled, properly done fish fight, technically, to the untrained eye, is actually very boring to watch.
It is.
If you really think about it. The ones that are exciting to watch, and boy, the rod's doing this and all this business, something ain't going right.
Hey, some of the best catfish fights I ever had in my life was during crappie fishing. I accidentally caught a catfish.
Ooh.
And you talking about 4-pound test, fighting a 7-pound, 10-pound catfish. It takes a while, but it's fun for the user, but it ain't fun for the watcher. So
yeah, you're right on that one. Oh,
I wouldn't with them when this happened, but my dad and my son had gone fishing in this little side lake off of the Atchafalaya River, and they were going to catch brim and sac-a-lait, but with some custom built 12-foot carbon jig poles. No, there's no reel. It's like using a cane pole. And John knows the guy that builds them, in fact. Well, they got into a pile of about some 2-pound channel cats with those little jig poles. And he said, man, they said they had the time of their life fighting the little 2-pound channel cats on them, because there's no drag, no nothing. You're that's it. You and the fish. And they probably caught 12 like that with those jig poles. It was amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let me go ahead and fix something that I said previously. I said crappie. I meant sac-a-lait.
Thank you. Thank you. You mispronounced sac-a-lait. I wasn't going to call you on it, but you did.
But
Big Mike says he runs his drag at 30 to 60%.
Yeah.
He said when they're in the rod holder, he goes, they're set to 20 to 40%.
Yeah. That's about what I do. I do about 40% in the rod holder when that fish hits. I put enough attention on it to know that it's going to set that circle hook good enough. And that last reel I do is just finishing it out. And then I adjust my drag from that after I feel the fish for a while. So, but
a good sharp hook does not need a ton of pressure to be set.
No. And a lot of people think
in for those in the back. A good sharp hook does not need all that pressure. You don't need it.
And that's why I use River Cat tackle hooks.
I was waiting for it. Gotta get that plug in there, right?
But hey, listen, I'm gonna run a little scenario that happened with me. The first time we went to John's fishing, I was out there it was foggy, dude. It was bad, and I was out there, out there in the current a little bit, and everybody else was on the bank. And I hooked a fish, and I couldn't see who was hollering this, but someone was hollering from either John's boat or another boat. They were saying, "Reel that fish in," and I told them it was a decent sized fish, and I told them, "Listen, I told him this is a good fish. I'm gonna let him get tired. I'll reel him in when he floats." So when he come to that top of that water, that's when I started getting down on him, because I knew he had spent so much energy during that first few minutes, and that's when I tightened up the drag a little bit, noticed what he was, and brought him in. So
right.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is that made that comment. I'm assuming it's Byron, but all I see is Facebook user. But highlight that comment, Lance. The hook and the tip of the rod does the work. I can't tell who that is, but that is it right there.
That's Byron.
I figured that. I figured.
Hey, that's 100% true too, because like I'm not gonna lie to you. I have used other rods before. I have Mad Cat experience 4 years. The Hellcats, I could only last 2 years. I couldn't take no more of that. And now that I'm running the Ancient Mariners, I like where the backbone comes in. I like that there's enough time that tip's got that sensitivity for enough time for that circle hook to do what it has to do to get a good hook set. Because if them fish feel that tight broomstick type pole, they spit that bait. And then fighting a fish with, I'm not going to name no names, when that pole bends all the way until you feel like you're fighting a fish with a stick about this long, it is kind of weird. And then if they ever run up, you lose so much line from that pole having to come all the way back up. I lost fish like that. So
Yeah. And
Definitely.
it's all about where you fish, the waters you fish, the conditions you're dealing with. Some rods that are way too, I'm gonna say small, really. I mean, not enough action. But rods that are too small for guys like us that fish the big rivers are perfect for a lot of guys that fish the lakes, especially with smaller fish. You definitely don't want to use a rod too heavy for what you're trying to do with it. Now, in our case here, well, maybe not Lance, but like our case here, I'd find it hard to believe a rod would just be too heavy unless you start using like a tuna rod or something like that. That's about the only way you're going to get too
I've
far
actually
out of
done
hand. I'm sure you have.
I have.
I have no doubt that you've done that.
I've done it.
Yeah. Just in my opinion, I like a little action. I like that hook to have time to do what it's going to do in the mouth and get to that corner and all that. If it's tight right away, they pull, I don't know. It's my thinking, my opinion on it, my hypothesis on it, so, but I just noted my hook set rate went up when I got a rod with a little bit more sensitivity at the tip with these circle hooks.
You need a more progressive action in the rod, basically. But you don't want the backbone to kick in 6 inches from the handle.
No, definitely not. Especially, it looks cool. Hey, that's another one of them things. It looks cool on video, but when you're pulling on a fish like that and you pull it up and it's 25 pounds and you're like, man, this thing felt like a hog or looked like a hog, and it wasn't. It's kind of like a scratch off ticket. You're either going to be depressed or really happy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Y'all know me. I've been using custom rods for a few years now, quite a few years. And the Ancient Mariner is the closest I've come to the rods that I use. It's tit for tat on the action and the backbone. And I mean, it's fun.
Oh, yeah. But do you understand how difficult it is to make a rod that is perfectly capable for catfishing in every situation? It's extremely difficult to do that.
Yeah.
So far, I'm very excited for these Ancient Mariner rods. I think this is where it's at. I really do. And I'm not just saying that because we sell them. I'm being serious. I'm picky about my rods. I don't like having different rods for different things. I don't like that. I like having one rod that I can bring with me anywhere I want, do what I want, and not have to worry about it. I'm very excited about these. I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's what I like about it. What Creole was talking about. I put this rod in heavy current just to see what it would do, and I was happy with its performance. And then I put it on the reservoir, and it does. It serves a purpose as far as taking the time that fish is pulling on it, trying to feel some weight and all that. So it's definitely a good in between pole. Majority of my fishing is going to be on the Mississippi River, but when I'm here close to home, don't want to travel, I just hit the reservoir where there's big catfish too. So,
right. When we go out, I could be suspending in an eddy that almost has no current. I could be anchored up on the soft side of a seam that has a 1 mile an hour current. I might be anchored up holding 24 ounces in 10 mile an hour current, trying to keep baits on the bottom. That could all happen in the same fishing trip with me. Yeah. I can't afford to bring 20 rods with me depending on the situation I find myself in. I need something that is going to get it done no matter what I ask of it. Because I just don't have room in my boat for 15 different kinds and actions of rods for different scenarios. It doesn't work that, for me, it doesn't work that way. It's got to be able to do everything I want it to do.
Yeah. Creole's, he's kind of in my dreams with that comment, because I did dream at one time that I had a fishing pole for every situation I was in. It was a good dream. And then the next day I had a dream. I put diesel in a regular gas. So
I'm not a big time like gear junkie, I suppose. I don't have the desire to own a specific thing to do a specific thing. I'm more of like, I want to spend my money and I want it to do just about anything I wanted to do within reason. That's how
within reason. Yeah,
within
exactly.
reason. I don't want to go catch brim with a Ancient Mariner Challenger rod. I'm not, within reason, like I said. But if I'm going hunting for catfish, I want to grab one rod.
Well,
and no
now
matter what situation I find myself in, I want that rod to get it done.
Well, that's why I was looking at CR catfish boats and ended up with a tracker. So
Right.
It was within reason.
Within
reason.
reason. That's right. Yeah. And look, I steal all this stuff all the time. Most of y'all hear me talk once a week about all this crazy stuff. And the same disclaimer that I give on my show, on my lives, everywhere. What I do applies to me in my situation, in my waters where I fish. If you're fishing a lake that never sees current, man, you might not want to listen to half of what I say. I'll be honest. You probably want to help.
Hey, Creole, you could imagine someone watching you and they're on a lake chunking 12-ounce weights.
Yeah, chunking 12-ounce weight and trying to figure out what's going on. Yeah, or taking out a bumping rod on a lake and trying to figure out why it's not working. It's like, it's a little bit different situation. Even people that fish very slow rivers, and I'm going to use the Ohio River as an example. Across the whole year, it's a much slower river than the Mississippi or the Atchafalaya, the Missouri, places like that. And Roger and I talk about this a lot, that of the differences of what we do and what we can do certain times of the year. As far as I will never drag baits up the Mississippi or up the Atchafalaya River. It's never going to happen. Not even in the midst of the biggest drought in history could I still drag baits up the Mississippi River. It ain't happening. We were maybe down to 2 miles an hour current, on average, 2.5. We were down to that. That's slow for us. But when it starts raining like all hell and, Rogers dams are blowing 100,000 cubic feet a second or more, and they're dealing with 5-6 mile an hour currents that they're not used to, first thing he'll ask me, hey, what do you think? What do you do? What? I'm like, all right, you're speaking my language now. Let me tell you how we handle that situation. And hey, catch fish. You got to apply the different scenarios.
You got to try.
I had when I bought the boat that I got now, it originally came with a 12-boat trolling motor on it.
Mm-hmm.
And in a week I sold that thing because it wouldn't work on the Mississippi.
Yeah.
It was nice on a reservoir. And this goes back to what you were talking about, Creole, as far as the equipment for what you want in your area. You're going to catch, you're going to catch hell with a 12-boat on the Mississippi River, but then you get on a reservoir and it's smooth as butter. So it's all to your situation.
Yeah, knowing what I know now, I would have waited and put a 36 volt on my boat. I have a 24. It does mostly what I wanted to do, but I run double batteries. That way I can run mine on 7, 8, or 9 for a few hours at a time and not drain my batteries. I have to compensate for that because I have a 24.
Yeah.
And I put that Kipple prop on mine. Made a big difference in how it performs. Big difference. I will not own a trolling motor without one of those Kipple props. I'll tell you that. I love them.
I'm saving up for one right now. I made good process, and I'm hoping to have it by this summer. Yeah. So I'm looking at the Lowrance Ghost to go along with my fish finder.
Okay. You want to be able to link? Yeah, because I think the only other thing you could do if that's the case is get a I think it's the Motor Guide trolling motors. We'll talk to a Lowrance graph if I remember right.
Yeah. See, the thing I was watching some videos. Like if I travel a line on my graph like this on a ledge, I can turn my trolling motor on and come back down that same path I took and suspend baits at that certain depth of water because I already know what the depth of water is because I just went over it, and I think that would make a huge difference on hooking some good fish.
Yeah, right. And that's a function that I have in my trolling motor already. I can actually, without even deploying it, I can turn it on. I can record a path just with the trolling motor.
Yeah.
And when I select to run the path, I have the option: do I start at the beginning or do I start at the end and come the other way? And that trolling motor will follow whatever path that I recorded. Yeah, that's a nice option, especially when if you
that's
drag
sweet.
bait. That is a great thing to have when you're dragging baits. Let me tell you. Yeah, because I've got the Minn Kota Tarova.
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm looking for. And that allows you the same option?
Yeah. The I can't speak for all of them, but the Minn Kota Tarova, all those options are incorporated in the trolling motor itself. Because I have a Lowrance Graph. My trolling motor and Graph do not talk to each other at all. I have all those functions just in my trolling motor.
Oh, really? I might have to check on that.
Oh yeah,
might save me $1,000.
I've got all of those options in. I think the one advantage, let's say, you would have of having a ranch trolling motor is you can actually select waypoints and paths on your graph, then translate that information to your trolling motor. You wouldn't necessarily have to run the path to record it. I think you can create it on your graph, then send that information to
Yeah. And then the thing I noticed about it is it does have a little bit higher thrust, as far as like spot locking and stuff like that. And a spot, because a lot of times I drop that anchor, I see a spot, I don't mark nothing, and I just like, man, this looks so good right here. I'll throw the anchor down. A lot of times that spot lock will come in real good right there. Just throw baits out there 15 minutes, 20 minutes, nothing happens, then I bounce to the next spot.
I've caught a lot of very nice fish spot locking in a hole or in an eddy where you can't anchor because it tries to spin your boat around. Well, if you spot lock and suspend, if it turns your boat in a circle, so what? You're suspending. Doesn't matter. And I will literally use, mine has the heading sensor. I can use the jog function. I can go forward, back, left, or right 5 feet. Every time I hit a button, it moves me over whatever direction I want 5 feet. So I can actually use that.
Oh, really?
I can use that to scoot myself around that hole and kind of, let's say, drift fish a large scour hole. I'll scoot over 10 foot, wait about 5 minutes. Okay, scoot over 10 foot, wait 5 minutes. I'll cover a little ground that way. Of course, a really nice fish.
That's sweet. That's real sweet.
Spot lock will ruin you. I'm telling you now. It will absolutely.
I know it.
I've been trying to tell John that for a year now. It will absolutely spoil you rotten. I would.
John's still hanging out that side door on the pontoon, hand grabbing fish.
Look, I can, in my opinion, I can do without every piece of technology I have. If I had to, you would see me cry like a baby without that trolling motor. I'm telling you right now that if I had to, I ain't giving that up. That just ain't happening.
Nah, I'm looking at Fishing and Freedom's comment. Now, my situation with the 36 boat is I don't have the storage for it in the boat. My boat has, I'm gonna do a review and put it here on YouTube, on my YouTube. But as far as the storage goes for my boat, it is absolutely horrible. If I had a review to do, the first thing I'm talking about is how horrible storage is in my boat. The battery compartment, I got 3 in there, and I got one. Well, no, I got 2 in there. One that runs my lights and one that used to run the trolling motor. And if I add one more in there, I would probably have an 8-inch by 12-inch spot to put stuff in that I need.
Come on. Go get that bird off me. That bird is going to be bait one day. I'm telling you. One of these days.
Oh, no.
Come over there. Lord have mercy. That poor bird. We were trying to find the bird a girlfriend right now. That might calm him down. It might do it. But I'm telling you it. But it's all about using what you got. And once you, it's like I guess you don't know what you're missing if you've never had it. It's the same thing with really good rods and reels. I'll be honest with you. If all you've ever used is Walmart equipment and you've just never you are determined, aren't you? If you've never used good quality gear before, and you've used Walmart stuff for all these years, do yourself a favor and check some of this stuff out. You'd be real surprised and how nice it is to have a little bit of quality gear. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then with the Ancient Mariners, the price of them are so reasonable,
Right?
And I mean, they appearance wise, I'm happy with them. I'm not looking for something that's 27 different colors, and
right.
You could put like they said, you could put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig, and I'm looking for something that does the job. So basically, and that's my experience with Ancient Mariner. I like I said, my experience is 3 years talking. I see a lot of people that have issues with them. I understand that they're, putting braid on an aluminum spool without a backing to it or something like that, and having issues. And you got to take it biased. You got to be biased about those reviews. Now, if I ever see 5 stars for something, I'm definitely digging into a product like that and trying to figure out what, how many reviews is it? What, are they handpicking the reviews? I want to see that in between, because there is a chance that somebody might, it might be a failure by the user. So.
Johnny locked up.
There we go. No, we got him back.
My phone's trying to update right now.
Oh, that's good timing there. That is a good question right there. Setting up your first boat, what should you budget? Two counter questions to this. Are you going to fish a river or a lake? It makes a difference. And are you going with a boat, or are you going with a pontoon? Because it's gonna matter kind of where you should throw your budget and where you could fix up. But overall, without knowing anything else, I'll say, one, don't skimp on your safety devices. Okay, get you some good, comfortable life jackets. Get you good fire extinguisher. All your good safety devices for your boat. That's to start off with. I'm gonna say your luxuries, your electronics, your nice trolling motor, all this stuff. You can still fish without. Okay, a good anchor, good quality anchor rope, good quality anchor cleats. Okay, river. So good. This is going to go into that. Good anchor, plenty of anchor rope, good anchor cleats. Make sure you have an anchor system that works well for you. That's your priority. Electronics. Buy the best one you can afford. The biggest screen that you can afford. Don't worry about trying to get a 12 or a 15. Get the biggest screen, the best one that you can afford at that time. Even though if it's a $500 unit, great. But learn how to use it to its fullest extent. Keep in mind that of all the fancy electronics I've got on my boat, still the primary thing I use 90% of the time is my regular 2D sonar. I use that still more than anything else. And if I had to downgrade to just a 2D sonar, I'd be just fine. I would still probably find just as many fish as I do now.
That's what I use the most.
Yeah, but that's in deep water.
2D. I use the 2D and the downscan the most.
Yeah, but you use it. If you learn how to use it, every single feature you've got, learn how to use it well. That's what your budget should focus on. Get what you can afford. Don't strain yourself. Just learn how to use it. I know 2 guys in the James River that probably have one of the most budget fish finders you could possibly afford and catch big fish consistently every time they go out. And I mean big fish, 50s and 60s, and they've knocked a few 70s this year. You don't need a $5,000 graph to go catch a catfish. It'd be nice. It'd be very nice. Don't get me wrong. It'd be very nice. But you don't have to have it.
No, you don't.
Spider said a while ago, to early bird gets the worm.
Yeah, I know, right?
Creole, as far as that the 2D sonar, do you run your sensitivity? Is there a certain point where you run your sensitivity? Because a lot of time what I get with my 2D sonar is I get a lot of noise from bait fish and this and that. Okay. And at times I ran.
What do you have exactly? What kind of graph you got?
I got the HDS Live 9-inch.
Okay, no, you've got a newer unit than I have. I've got an Elite TI2 9-inch, but still very very similar. Right now I run, especially when the river's a little trashy, I run my sensitivity on anywhere between -2 and -4, but still on the automatic setting. But I do that for a couple of reasons. One, if that fish isn't 15, 20 pounds, I don't even want to see it on my sonar. I don't even want to bother with it. There's a lot, unless it's a really big cloud of bait, I won't see too much of it. It helps me get a lot of that noise out by just bringing that sensitivity down. So, -2, -4, and that's on the 200 megahertz setting. I don't run the 83. I run 200.
Yeah.
Now, what I like to do personally, and I think you have that option on yours, I've many times run my down scan, but overlaid my 2D on the down scan, especially this time of year during the winter. This little tip for everybody here. Sometimes you'll see fish tucked right down on the bottom that just regular 2D you would miss.
Yeah.
That down scan with the 2D overlay, it'll show you just that little bit of separation. You'll see a few more fish that you normally would have for this time of year. Now, when they're really active, 2 feet off the bottom, doesn't matter as much. Right now, that's a good little trick.
And I run my sensitivity a little bit higher because I like pulling in them 15 pounders, especially getting a pile of them. It's fun.
Yeah, and that's fun. And if you run your sensitivity a little higher, then you're gonna get a little more of that track. But if you take your noise rejection and turn it up higher, it'll get some of that, what I call that glitter off the screen, some of that blue fuzz that you see sometimes. Turn your noise rejection up and make sure your transducer is leveled and set perfectly for how your boat sits in the water. You'd be surprised how much that makes a difference on what your signal looks like. Because I know my boat, my transducer is not level with the bottom of the boat because that's not how it sits.
Mine's a little angled up because when the boat sits in there, you got a lot of back weight.
It's the same way on that pontoon.
Yep.
It's actually angled up a touch. It's not a whole lot, but it's noticeable that you can see.
Right.
Therefore, when you're setting still and you're fishing, it's setting straight.
Yeah, I end up last time I went out, I end up hitting I call it beaver trash. This time of year when you get these small rises, you get that small beaver trash. Little sticks coming down, and I must have just hit one on my fish finder, and on one end is kind of bent on the bracket. So I think that's why I've been getting a lot of noise and fuzzy looking stuff. I've seen a lot of bait balls here in the last week, and it wasn't bait balls.
I'm trying. I keep thinking this is my show. I'm over here clicking comments, like a fool. Actually, look, we can always do that. And I'll tell you something that Roger and I have been planning on doing on our show for quite a while now. Is trying to schedule it to where we're out on the water in a boat. Either me doing it or him doing it for the show. That to show y'all all this stuff live on the water. So you can actually physically see what it looks like real time as I'm going over it. And then another show we'll do, because Roger's got all Garmin stuff on his. I've got Lowrance stuff on mine. And by God, I think his buddy, Zach, has got a Humminbird on his. So we'll take turns. We'll show you all 3 brands. But that's definitely something we can talk about here at any time,
I wasted a lot of money on fish finders as far as the brands go. I was getting what other people had, and I found my medium happy with Lowrance. I mean, the one thing I don't like about Humminbird is it's got that click button control, and I got such a habit of touching the screen of everything right now that it was kind of like hard to get used to. Garmin, I had a bad experience with them. I think they're more made for their live scope. They're more focused on their live scope than actually for us cat fishermen. Now with the Lowrance, the 3, I guess it's called the 3-shot or whatever it's called. I love that thing, dude. I can identify stuff on the bottom and actually see what it is. I seen an old boat wreck and I knew it was a boat. And if I had another fish finder, I wouldn't know what it was. I would think it was a whole bunch of trash or something just piled up in one little area. So I love that about Lowrance. Is definitely took me a lot of money to find that fish finder, basically. So
when I was going to purchase mine, and I keep in mind this was almost 4 years ago. I did, because I geek out about all this stuff. I research it to death, and I researched for 6 months before I finally dropped the money on the unit that I have. And after my research for what I wanted, that's the one I chose, and no regrets at all. Every brand has its things that it's good at. Every brand has its things that it's not so good at. Roger would agree with me that Lowrance, it does everything pretty darn good. It just doesn't really excel at anything except being user friendly. I find it's the most user friendly unit.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
Yeah, see, that's the thing I was having an issue with the Garmin was there's so much that you have to do for the waters you fish to get it to show the way you want it to show, that it was almost like, man, it's more of a chore getting this thing set up than anything for the water I'm fishing.
And again, it's what you're used to. You know, apparently the way my mind works, Lowrance is user friendly for me. I see Chad right here in the chat. He said Garmin for him was way more user friendly for him. I think sometimes it's just the way you're, you know, the technology you're used to using. Certain ones are going to seem easier than others. And
that's to go back on a comment I made earlier. I mean, you could iPhone users and Samsung users, you can give them the phone, and it, you know, there's a learning curve there. So
I'm pretty easy. Throw the anchor in the eddy, get the coffee bottle out, sit there and take a nap, and wake up to a rod squealing.
Well, see, a good thing is I never grew up with all this stuff. You know, I had old boats that whatever it had. I learned to read water, you know, to see what water, you know, what the water's doing, and just the understanding and spending time out there. You know, it's a lot easier nowadays.
That
time
right
on
there.
the water.
Yeah, I tell people that. I said, you can sit there and talk about this. We can look at this Google Earth Pro, and you won't know what that spot is until you go out there and you soak some bait in that spot.
Yeah.
So you know.
Yeah, studying my electronics out on the water has taught me so much about when I see something on the surface, what is going on beneath it. My electronics have actually taught me how to read the river.
Yeah,
it really has, because when I scan it, I'm also paying attention to the water's surface, the banks, what's going on around me. It helped me make sense of why that water is doing that. And the electronics made me better at reading my river. It really did.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Since I have my electronics, I know what I'm looking at now. Now, before I had my electronics, what made me learn about it is a couple near-death experiences. So, hey, you know, it looked like 100 foot of water, and it wasn't. So,
yeah.
But yeah, definitely, I was able to put that together once I got underneath these electronics and kind of seeing what I was looking at, and like, wow, that's where the hole is at. It's not over there, you know.
Yeah, because if you don't know, it might surprise you what something actually looks like when you look at it on the surface. It's pretty gnarly sometimes to see some of these big features that we see on the big river. I know some people that fish the smaller rivers and lakes aren't used to seeing ledges that are sharp drops 60, 70 feet tall. They're just not used to that. But that's some of the stuff that we see that's normal to us. I mean, a 10-foot drop, you know, and maybe it should, but that doesn't turn our heads necessarily all the time.
No.
Yeah.
You know, not necessarily.
When we run across a flat bottom and then all of a sudden you see 70 foot.
Yeah.
That strikes your interest real hard. You pull back, turn around, and you start scanning that hole.
Right.
Yeah. See, I had an issue with a spot just recently like that. I anchored up where it was a current seam, and the fish finder was like a wall, and it went from 14 foot to 72. Now I anchored up too far back, and I was dragging fish up on the rocks that were down there, and I lost some fish, and I hooked one. I got the video of it, and I watch it every time to get a little bit of depression in my life. But hey, I had hooked a good fish on the 7,000 Ancient Mariner, and what happened was that braid dragged across the rock and snapped it. Like, you know, we already know what braid is. I like to use it in open water. You know, I got rods with mono, I got rods with braid, you know, for different situations.
Yeah.
So, but that was an issue. I anchored up wrong, didn't let out enough line to get past that ledge. And but I'm gonna check that spot again here soon. Hopefully, if the weather cooperates.
Yeah, you see me in a situation like that when especially a steep ledge like that, I like putting the transom of my boat right on the point of that ledge where it dives down, and basically all my anchoring rods at that point are just about down rods. I'm gonna have two straight down with some heavy weights, and I'm, you know, and some people who've seen me fish enough know what I'm doing when I do. I fish a ledge like that all the time in the Atchafalaya. And you'll see me put my anchoring rods out and I'm doing this. It almost looks like I'm bumping. But what I'm doing, I'm feeling that weight hit the top of that ledge, and I'm literally walking that weight down that ledge until I feel it get to the bottom. And then
I did a live just recently where I tried to get right on that ledge, but I had barge traffic coming by. And if you're right anchored on there, if that anchor falls off that ledge, your boat's moving. So that was an issue. I was testing my limits on it, and every time I got anchored up and put that bait in front of the marks I seen, the barge was coming by and pushing that anchor right off that ledge. And before you know it, I was drifting.
The beauty of spot lock.
Yes, that's why I was. Yeah.
The beauty of spot lock, because even though that barge is fixing to run over me, you know what? I can pull up my rods, take my trolling motor, get out of his way. Once he passes, I can hit one button. It'll go right back to the last spot that it was. Get right back on it.
Yeah, I got to get it. I might check on that one that you were talking about.
You need to look at the Minn Kota Tarova. Trust me, you need look at all the options. Look, there's a multitude of YouTube videos out there on people using it, the features and everything else. Dude, I'm telling you, it is an absolute tank of a trolling motor. They take a beating, and people just don't have problems with them, man. It's like a Ford truck. They just keep on going. You ain't got to worry about them. Chat's fixing to annihilate me for that comment.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on my response on this.
Yeah, Chat's gonna be like, "What? Nope, unsub."
you had me sold until you said that.
Yeah, well, I gotta throw that in there. You know how that is.
Yeah, I got you.
I gotta throw that in there. But seriously, you check out that Tarova. I'm telling you, you won't regret it.
Yeah, I'll check it out, man. I'm gonna do that.
If you're gonna be broke and happy. That's what I say.
Yeah, broke and happy.
Broke and happy.
Dude, that's gonna save me some money for what I've been saving for. I got a little paper here, and I got check marks on it. Once I reach all the check marks, and that envelope will be enough for that trolling motor. But
there you go.
If I find something that's cheaper and does the same thing, then I guess I'll have an extra $1,000 to buy fishing equipment.
Yep. Now they make two different versions of the Tarova. The regular Tarova, it's all black. The one on my boat, it's called the Riptide version of the trolling motor. It's white, and it's actually designed to be used in saltwater.
Yeah.
So if you want to use your boat in saltwater, I would highly recommend getting I think it's like $100 more to get the white Riptide version. But it's all metal on the bottom. It has the anode in it and everything. You can run it in salt water. But other than that, that's the only difference in the two is it's saltwater safe.
Yeah. So I might check that out.
Yeah. Yep, definitely.
Yes, indeed.
I love mine. I would not live my life without it. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah. But yeah, we got some interesting things coming this year, that's for sure.
Yes.
We got some interesting things on our side and other sides also.
Yep. 2024 is going to be a year of big changes, new things, unique things. I'll say that too. It's going to be a good year. Y'all might want to watch very carefully over the next few months There'll be some cool stuff. Cool stuff happening. Promise.
Yes, indeed. Well, Johnny, you got anything you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to, we already been on here. We had a great conversation already. Maybe for a future show, I wanted to just have an issue that I have that kept me away from fish was, I call it when, where, and how. I would fish spots, and it would be good certain times a year, and I would get locked on that spot and always check on it and waste time there throughout the year when I could have been putting my bait in the right spot or how they want it suspended, this and that, and what time of year it is. All that needs to be taken accounted of. I got a spot from the bank where I pretty much murder fish in March, and I can go there in July and not catch nothing. And but I would spend the time there just because of how good I did in March. And just that it just comes down to understanding of where you're fishing, how you're fishing suspended, are they biting better suspended, and this and that. It's different scenarios. I mean, I went out there fishing, and every pole that I hung up, I had hanging off the back, and every one that I had on the bottom cast out the back, I would only get bites off the ones that were hanging up. So, and then that will kind of give you a way to fish wanted, basically, So, but that's just something I wanted to talk about. But like I said, this show is gonna be going on every Sunday. We've been on here an hour and a half, had good conversation, and we can just keep on chopping it up for another 4 hours, I believe, talking about fishing. If you're like me, so
yeah,
I don't have to work tomorrow, so I'm just saying. You know me, I'm game. I'll run my mouth forever.
Yeah, I love fishing.
You had to say that?
Yeah.
Damn.
Hey, there are some people that can out-talk me. I ain't saying no names, but I'm just you better turn that finger. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Yes,
but it's a good subject that Johnny's talking about here, and that's, I know that's something that Roger and I have talked about on our show many, many times. And I think everybody out there at one time has covered this subject of exactly what Johnny's talking about. And it's worth talking about again is, what I call like the bad habits of fishing. And there's a couple of bad habits that I used to have. One is fishing spots.
Spot lock.
And what some people call fishing for ghosts. Like, oh man, we caught a 71 pounder here last year, and that, you know what, that was last year. That don't mean nothing anymore.
Not at all.
That don't mean nothing a week ago.
Nope.
And that's
spot just because you caught a fish there at one point in time. When I got that thought out of my head and started fishing for fish. Now I'll check spots, and at certain times of the year, I start having an understanding of, hey, this is going on, this is going on. These fish should be in this spot. But I'm going to confirm that with my electronics. If they're not there, I'm gone. I do not, under any circumstances, drop baits in the water unless I'm marking fish. That is now a 100% rule in my boat. I do not throw a bait in the water unless I mark fish, and I better mark some good fish.
And that's something that that happened to me this year. I went out there with Huxley, John, and there was a lot of people that I knew that were fishing the river, and I was calling them. I was like, "Where are you fishing at?" And they call out names. I'm fishing Fort Dice. I'm fishing over here by Papa's Chute. And I know what waters they're fishing because I fished there before. And I was like, okay, that's deep water. We anchored up in 34 foot of water, probably casting out the 36, sand, somewhere, no structure, nothing. Dude, we caught 17 fish. Now, biggest one was 30 pounds, but 17 fish in 4 hours, dude.
Well,
that was a fun day.
Were you happy catching those fish?
Oh, 100%. And like I said, I had a kid.
And that's all that matters right there.
I had a kid on the boat. And
That's what it boils down to. As long as you had fun and you enjoyed what happened and what you caught, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. If you enjoyed catching those smaller fish, don't let nobody tell you any different that you did anything wrong or you need to do this, need to do that. If you're happy with what you're catching, go for it.
I let it come natural. I call it the big fish itch, and it comes. And when it comes, and that's what I search for. But other than that, if I mark marks, I throw bait out there, and hey, I pull big fish out there. Sometimes out of them areas that I'm fishing, where I'm just trying to catch fish, and that's it's almost more rewarding to me. When you're fishing just a spot that you marked fish, and all of a sudden you got this big fish. Now you can go out there and like I call it the big fish itch. And you can turn that sensitivity down. You could fish them big marks and move on and keep on doing that. And you'll catch you'll catch some good fish, but it makes it more like a job. It takes the whole kick your feet up, poles out the back and hang out and fish. I like to do it both ways. I let it come naturally. The big fish itch it's like foot fungus.
What? I don't even want to know. Oh my god! Of all things,
there's stages of foot fungus. The itching stage is the later stage of it.
Well, I can tell you now. My brain is wired different than probably most people, and I understand that. But my big fish itch never stops. It doesn't matter. Mine, I have to force myself to target smaller fish. I just do. My brain is not wired that way. And what makes me happy in a fishing trip, if I can catch one fish over 40, that is all I need to make me happy and to call it a successful trip. I'm looking for that one big bite. Now, if I catch quite a few fish and hit me a 40 or a 50 or bigger, then so much the better, especially for the people fishing with me. Depending on who's in the boat, I may have to kind of retrain my brain and say, okay, you know what, the kids are with us today. Let's get them on some fish. Let's worry about the big ones later. Let's get them on some fish. You kind of have to put almost like a fishing guide mentality, depending on who's with you. You kind of have to be like, okay, I can go chase big fish anytime. I want to show these people a good time. They're with me. Let's get some rods bending, then we'll worry about everything else.
Hey, them spots that make you say, ooh, when you see that mark on the thing, I anchor up there and I catch whatever that is. I promise you I will. Most
people who fish with me enough, like my son, my dad, my wife, they know that when I'm cruising, looking at that graph, and then all of a sudden I snap my head to the side and look at the bank, they know you saw something, because I'm instantly looking at the bank to see where my boat needs to be to get back.
Hey,
good.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing you said, Creole, because this is what I did with my my trolling, not trolling motor, fish finder experiences was I went past a bridge and I counted until that on the side scan until that beam showed up, and that told me how far the delay was from my fish finder recognizing what I recognized and knowing where the fish is. And 20 foot will be the difference between you catching that fish and not catching that fish. And me and Iconic did that, John, when we were fishing, and he hooked that fish, that last fish over there. We marked that fish, we looked at the bank, and we let out a little bit of more anchor line to let the boat drift back a little bit more. And as soon as that bait hit the bottom, I kind of hooked up to that fish. I couldn't even get my bait out there. I was mad.
Right. Now, another little trick that I use, especially this time of year when that strike zone has shrunk to maybe that much in front of that fish.
Yeah.
You got to be precise. What I've learned how to do is if I mark fish, I'll go ahead and store a waypoint on my fish finder. Go ahead and store a good point. Then I'll turn around and I'll come at the mark from the exact same direction. That way I don't have that offset error between my GPS and my transducer. That's a whole thing too, if you really want to get precise about it. There's that distance you have to consider. And what I will do, I will physically click on my screen and navigate myself to that waypoint. That way it shows me exactly how far I am from it in feet. and I'll position my boat. Usually I'm about a 50-foot guy. I like being 50 foot upstream of my marks. That suits my casting distance and everything else.
Yeah.
But I precisely know exactly how many feet that mark is behind my boat. And I can really be accurate in putting my baits. That helps a ton in closing that window down and getting baits where you want them.
There's a smaller river I fish where I can kind of put bait in half of the river off the back of my boat, and it's a method I learned years ago from Steve Douglas. He calls it bounding down, and basically what you're doing is
what you're talking about.
You got your boat, you're throwing it out the cast line, and what I would do if I don't get no bites in 15 minutes, I'll reel up them lines, lift my anchor, let my boat float right to where I cast at, and then cast back out, and that has put me on plenty of fish.
Right, and really,
and I would do that all
what you're doing. That is a method, kind of drift fishing. You're covering water at that point.
Yeah.
Oh, Jody. Yeah, and that's exactly what I was doing too. I was doing that. I was throwing over their heads, and until I learned that trick and kind of realized where I was, it got me better in positioning the boat, and that caught me more fish. I got better at catching marks, the marks that I was seeing on
catching the marks.
It made me better.
Yeah.
But all these little things just come with time. It just does. And look, all this information, it's not stuff that, let's say, came to me in a dream. Okay. This is stuff I learned from other people on YouTube. 90% of what I know about catfishing came from somebody on YouTube. I just had to adapt it a little to my waters because it's a little different situation than most people fish. John knows my area. He knows what I'm talking about.
Yep.
You got to modify a little bit, but the base knowledge, guys, it's on YouTube. It's there. It's somebody has said what I'm saying at some point in time on a YouTube video.
The only thing
I'm repeating what I was taught.
It's like you said, the Creole, what they applying to their water, you might have to adjust and adapt a few different techniques to make that same thing work on your water, whether it's a lake or a small river, whichever. But if you don't try something, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, definitely. And listen, I'm going to tell you, I got a friend, and I call him a limb line fisherman. That's getting into fishing from the boat, as far as putting out lines and going back and then come checking them. He's producing fish like crazy, but once he got some poles out the back, he's not doing too well. He ain't ready. But we working on it. We're gonna get him right.
It's a totally different type of fishing because look, I've got a lot of friends who commercially fish. They set lines, they set trot lines, they use all this stuff. And I've learned a lot from them. And the first thing I've learned is that I can't necessarily adapt the places that they set their stuff into results for me on rod and reel. It's different. Paying attention to what they do, why they do it, how they do it. The biggest thing it's taught me is how fish move, how they move in the river. I've learned a lot from the commercial fishermen because if you think about it, they're masters of where those fish are going to travel because the way they fish depends on that. A lot like a bank fisherman.
Byron said he drifts a lot in the ocean for fluke.
Interesting.
I actually went striper fishing. Was it last year? I think the memories should come up soon to when they got a spillway over here and them striped bass run up there when they let water out. And I was fishing with flukes, and I was catching catfish on them. Letting them hit the flukes, hit the bottom, and jerking them up 2 times, and I was hitting flat heads and all kind of stuff on them.
Yeah, look, a little knowledge, some tips and tricks. You'd be real surprised where you can pick them up from. Look, there's a lot to be learned from offshore fishermen. Little techniques that you've never heard of, but all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, that's a good idea. I think I can adapt that to use for what I'm trying to do. I mean, it's inspiration can come from anywhere. It really can.
Yep. But if y'all guys want, we can go ahead and end this and save some for another night.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, it was great, great conversation. I mean, like I said, River Cat Tackle Hooks is basically the best hooks I have used. And as far as the Ancient Mariner reels go, 3 years experience, I got nothing but good stuff to say about them. And, I'm happy with what I use. And it cost me a lot of money, following these big names and stuff like that to figure out that, hey, there's a happy medium in the fishing community. And and I found that, with River Cat Tackle and Ancient Mariner. So,
Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely. It's been a good night. I like it. We'll have to do this again.
Yes, indeed.
All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. And next week, same time, same place.
Ain't no telling who will be on here.
Exactly.
Ain't no telling.
Everybody have a good night.
All right, guys.
bye-bye.